Now, of course, the president tweeted earlier in the day this: with universal mail-in voting, not absentee voting, which is good, 2020 will be the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history. It will be a great embarrassment to the USA. Delay the election until people can properly, securely, and safely vote? Question mark from the president. Joining me right now is North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer. Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Your reaction to the president's commentary yesterday?
Well, I think that the president, first of all, in his tweet, I think he accomplished exactly what he set out to accomplish, and that is to expose the hypocrisy of the left's positions on voting, and that led to, of course, all their hair getting on fire, and then him coming back and sort of explaining his point. And I think he made the point beautifully, and I think he's exactly right. If we have a mandatory mail-in voting, it is right for opportunity for mischief and fraud, especially in states like California that do ballot harvesting. Having multiple people, in the supply chain of voting just makes zero sense whatsoever. So I think he's right. We ought to have, in-person voting for the most part, stick to that tradition. Now, maybe there are some other ways to do that in this environment. I had a smart North Dakotan yesterday suggest that maybe instead of having one day, let's have 3 election days back to back to back, but slow down the process, allow for social distancing, but still encourage people to vote in person. And I think the president was right on point yesterday.
So there's no change in the election. We're going to have the election. There will be some mail-in voting, and there will be people going to the polls, correct?
Maria, I can't imagine a scenario. There may very well be one at some point in the history of our country where you would delay an election. This would not be one of those scenarios, and I don't think the president ever believed or intended that it should be. But he raised the question and caused the conversation.
Senator, I want to ask you about this stalemate going on in Washington. Lawmakers in the White House unable to reach a deal on the stimulus plan, and extra unemployment benefits are expiring today. Speaker Pelosi last night, she spoke, but not before Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell made his feelings known on the Senate floor. What is your take on what's happening this morning in terms of both sides? Will you guys reach an agreement?
Well, as my friend John Boehner used to say, Congress is a place where things happen really slowly till they happen very fast. And oftentimes it's the cliff, the deadline, that prompts that fast action. Sometimes you actually have to go over that cliff. That was unfortunate yesterday that we weren't able to come to an agreement. I think one of the greatest demonstrations of hypocrisy by the Democrats was when Senator McSally offered a 1-week extension to the existing $600 boost in benefits, and Senator Schumer himself objected to that, so we couldn't pass it on unanimous consent. I think the Johnson bill that's being discussed, that also failed on a unanimous consent last night or yesterday, is a good starting point. We now have a vehicle, as you probably know, that we passed yesterday that will allow us to continue the negotiation and have a bill that we can fill with the details. I think Romney, Collins have a good idea where he provides a few more options. But one thing's for sure, Maria, at least in North Dakota, the single greatest complaint I get about the CARES Act, and there are lots of things people like about it, but the single biggest complaint I get is the perverse incentive for people to not work. And that's just not fair to the people who are working, nor is it fair to the employers who can't get their employees back because they're making too much money not working.
So what about North Dakota? What can North Dakota tell us about this recovery? We had a serious contraction in the second quarter. We got the GDP yesterday, contraction of 32%. Of course, we're seeing spikes across the country, and now this whole reopening is in question. Some people pulling back on that. And we just had earnings from ExxonMobil, and it was a loss again. Your state is an oil-rich, energy-rich, I should say, state. What can you tell us what you're seeing in terms of this recovery right now, Senator?
Sure. So we are energy rich. We do have a lot of oil. We have some gas. We have lots of coal. We have a lot of wind, and we have a lot of ethanol. So we are energy rich. However, most of what's driving the lack of revenue or the loss of revenue in the energy sector is simply a loss of market, a loss of demand. And so what we see in North Dakota is, of course, we're suffering the same as every place that generates a lot of oil. But we also see that people want to work. They want to produce what they're used to producing, whether they're farmers or oil men or manufacturers, and they want to see the economy open back up. And I think there's a great deal of frustration in North Dakota from people who see this, as you said, the rollbacks, the fits and starts, the starting and stepping back, and they want to plow through this thing. They want to do it in a safe manner, but walking 5 yards across a 10-yard bed of hot coals only to turn around and walk back because your feet are burning doesn't get you anywhere. And I think people are frustrated. They want to go back to work, and they want to open the economy and minimize risk, but not try to avoid risk.
All right, Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much. Senator Kevin
Pleasure's
Cramer
mine.
joining
Thank
us
you.
this morning.